Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the 2024 preseason power rankings, where today we'll be going over our 20th ranked team, the Arizona Cardinals, a team that was surprisingly competitive in a sense last year. They were scrappy, is what I would say. They were in a lot of games without a lot of talent. And now, after an offseason of adding talent, of getting their star quarterback back, we think this team has some very fun potential. But before we start today, Pat, how are we doing today?
I'm great. I'm great. The people that listen to the podcast know I recently started a summer camp job. That is driving me insane slowly. If I don't make it to the start of the season, these third graders are the reason why. But besides that, I'm just excited to talk about the Arizona Cardinals. I think that this is a team that pretty much the NFL community agrees way better than last year. Way better. The question is how
Way
much
better.
better? That is to be seen. I don't want to overhype them too much, but I am going to say I definitely struggle to rank them lower. Okay?
Oh yeah, I think you might be able to argue higher, but that's
Yeah.
I think projecting a little too much at that
And
point.
that's the thing, right?
So
This is
that's
a
where we
team
settled.
that I don't see a world where they're embarrassingly bad. I don't.
Mm.
But I do see a world where they have the top wide receiver quarterback connection in football. I do. I do see a world where they lead the league in passing yards. I do see a world where this defense isn't quite as bad as people might think. I do see a world where Jonathan Gannon is in the coach of the year conversation. Like, this is a team that I think has a lot to be optimistic about, if not this year, at least down the line.
It's a team that I think could be a sort of Texans from last year, like a team that can be that. It can be a playoff team and can be a competitive playoff team. That's where we're at with it. Let's start with the head coach and culture, Jonathan Gannon. What can you tell me about Jonathan Gannon?
Well, the thing you got to get about Jonathan Gannon, right? I want to go back to kind of a year ago where Jonathan Gannon was first hired, right? After a pretty bad performance by that Eagles defense against
Really
the
rough,
Kansas City
yeah.
Chiefs, right? It was a bad performance, objectively. But Jonathan Gannon still got hired to be a head coach. A lot of people said, why are you doing that? He just let up 40 points at the Super Bowl. What are you doing?
I was one of those people. I said the Cardinals got the scraps of the coaching cycles, was
Yeah.
something I said in the video.
But what a lot of people don't understand, it's something it is very difficult for NFL media to understand because we're not around these coaches. We don't know what the facility is saying about these guys. We don't know how the players feel about these guys. Gannon wasn't hired because he was some great defensive mind. He was hired because he was a culture guy. He was. And I know that's a little bit hard to believe, and it did get really hard to believe before last season started because there were
And
some
even like
clips.
in
Yeah.
the opening press conferences,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. There were some clips of the guy that were like, this guy's a cringe lord. We
This guy's
think
a
he's going to
dork.
be.
This
Yeah,
guy's a
he's a
dork.
dork. Exactly. Right? I think there's a video of him like dapping up Buda
Yes,
Baker.
that's what it
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
That's the first one I thought of.
There were a lot of clips that made him seem like he was going to be a laughingstock. And then week one, they go to the wire against another good football team, right? And then the next week, I mean, they nearly beat the Giants, a team that made the playoffs the year prior and
They
won a
were
playoff game.
embarrassing the
Yeah,
Giants the first
exactly.
half. Yeah.
And then some stuff obviously happened, but the fact is, this Cardinals team was superbly competitive for a large portion of last year.
And that Giants loss, I think, spells it out a little bit. Really competitive when it came to the coaching. Gannon and Drew Petzing, who we'll get to shortly, were often out coaching the other team. It was just a matter of the talent at some point caught up with them. This
Mm-hmm.
team didn't have a lot of talented players on offense or on defense for a majority of the season. And at some point, they would just run out of gas.
Mm-hmm.
The talent of the other team would take over.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen this year.
And I just want to say, you got to keep in mind, last year, they didn't have Kyler Murray for a large portion of it. Not
They
only
did not.
does that hurt the offense, obviously, but it hurts the locker room because I know there's some talk about Kyler Murray as a person and as a leader. But Kyler Murray is the quarterback. He is the heart and soul of your football team. That's how the NFL works, man. Right? And when you're missing a guy like him, that really hurts your entire team, not just the offense. Yet they still
Absolutely.
went out there and were competitive right off the bat. You say you thought the problem was that they didn't have the talent, and why, yes, of course that's the case. I want to kind of phrase it in a different way because I think you are right in saying that, but Jonathan Gannon did a really good job scheming up ways to make up for the lack of talent, right? And
Yes,
we'll get into the
exactly. Yes.
defensive scheme later, but he did a lot of stuff that really was like, wow, it doesn't matter who you have out there. As long as you have NFL football players, they could be third stringers, whatever, you will be able to catch an offense off guard and stay competitive doing stuff like he was doing. However, when that film comes out, you no longer have the element of surprise. They were such a catch an opposing team off guard dependent team. When they couldn't catch you off guard, they kind of just got steamrolled because they didn't
Right.
have the talent, like you said. And that's the reality with that football team. But we're no longer talking about the 2022 Arizona Cardinals. We're talking about the 2024 Arizona Cardinals. I skipped a year, but you
You
get my
did skip
point.
a year. I was going to say it, but there you go. Let's move over to this offense and talk about offense coordinator Drew Petzing, who did a fantastic job last year with the team that he had. If you don't know, Petzing came over from Cleveland. He's a Stefanski disciple, brings over that West Coast sort of ground and pound style of offense, and that's exactly what this team is going for. If you look at their offseason additions, their draft choices, this team wants to run the
Yeah,
football. And
yeah,
even last year, before they added this talent, this team was really good at running the football.
yeah,
this
they
this
absolutely
team,
were.
fun fact, ever since when Kyler Murray came back, when it came to yards per carry and I believe rush EPA per play, this was the best running team in football.
Yeah, that does not surprise me, really. And notice how Kyler Murray is a contributor in their ability to run the football, right? And that's because they aren't just this stereotypical ground and pound football. They're the new modernized version
Yes.
of that. Now we're seeing Pittsburgh and some other teams in this league kind of try and replicate that style of offense because it used to be you're a smash mouth football team. You got to have a fullback. You got to be under center. You got to be running a lot of, power and counter. And, you got to really be beating guys up. And you have to have big guys on the offensive line. The Cardinals are running a lot of shotgun.
A
Right?
lot of shotgun.
A lot of shotgun. Yet they're still embracing a, two tight end personality. Right? They're still going out there and running the football a lot. Run first offense. This is what the new run heavy offenses look like.
And it's about that creativity. Drew Petzing is very, very creative in the run game. There's a lot of motion. It's not stagnant. It's out of different formations. They run a lot of the same things. So they run something completely new. He was so creative last year. He really did a
Yeah,
fantastic job with this team.
of course. Yeah, and it's just so unique, right? A spread offense, not spread, but a kind of spread offense
In a way, yeah.
in a way that likes to run a lot of heavy sets. It's very unique. I have a statistic written down. They led the league in 13 personnel rate with 10%, 1/10 of their plays being run out of that personnel grouping.
And if you don't
30,
know, 13 personnel is 3 tight ends, 1 running back.
yeah.
Just make sure
And
that.
30% of their personnel, or 30% of their plays, were at least two tight ends on the field.
That doesn't surprise me at all. They ran 2 tight ends.
A lot. It, again, it used to be you got to have the fullback, you got to have the big running back, you got to have downhill runners. That's not what this offense is. That's not. It is a run heavy offense, but it's the new run heavy.
Yep.
And I love seeing it. It's a really creative and unique thing. And so far, the experiment is working well with Petzing. I think his offense, whether you think he's Shanahan or not, no, he isn't Shanahan, but he is having probably the most unique offense. I would say it's at least one of the most unique offenses in the league.
Definitely one of the most, yes.
Yeah, it's a fun watch for me. It really is. I love it.
So let's move over to the quarterback now. A guy who missed half the year last year, Kyler Murray. Very controversial, maybe not controversial is the word, divisive quarterback. People have mixed opinions on him. I happen to think Kyler Murray is a superstar. I think he's amazing. I think he's a really damn good quarterback when he's healthy. And it's just a matter of can he stay healthy? And I think You hope he can, is what I mean. You hope he can stay healthy. We've talked about Cliff Kingsbury before, talking in our Commanders video. We have very low opinion of Cliff Kingsbury. At least I do. And we forget Kyler Murray was an MVP candidate until he got hurt under Cliff Kingsbury. And it was largely because of Kyler Murray, not because of Cliff. Like, Kyler Murray's that kind of game-breaking player. And we get to pair that game-breakingness with the creativity of Petzing, and in an offense where it's not just Kyler Murray having to do everything now. This team has a run game. This team gets players open. I think Kyler Murray's set up for success. I think Kyler Murray's going to be a dark horse MVP candidate next year under this offense, and depending on how good this team can be. So I'm up on Kyler Murray.
Yeah, I think the thing with Kyler, right, is he's going to get hurt. But besides that, you have a phenomenal quarterback. Runs really well. Really well. And I think it kind of took people a little bit too long to realize. Everyone knew he had a rocket, but realize how much of a rocket
he has. An arm, man.
Yeah. Now, he plays quarterback in his own kind of special way because he is a shorter guy. He can't really get it done as a middle-of-the-field passer. And while I like Petzing, I do want to say it felt like... now, maybe it was because Kyler was coming back from injury, but it felt like Petzing was kind of forcing him to play a style of football that really wasn't Kyler Murray, was forcing him to stay in the pocket, be more of a rhythm passer, and that's just not his game. But that also could have just been Kyler Murray coming back from injury. You have to stick to the same offense you were doing. That is to be seen. Right, we need to see exactly how that plays out. But I think if they go kind of back to a little bit more of letting Kyler Murray do Kyler Murray, they're going to be in a great spot in terms of the guy taking the snaps and him making plays.
And one thing we have to think about with this really great rushing offense, Kyler Murray on bootlegs, it's going to be a big deal. Like, that's getting him on the move out of play action is going to be really effective. And behind him, you've got Desmond Ridder, who fine backup quarterback. I mean, it's a good quarterback room. Yeah. Like, I don't think Desmond Ridder's very good, but I'll take he's a good backup to
and
have,
he's in a run heavy offense too.
Yes.
Right, so that'll kind of cover up for it. And he can run. He can run, and they need that. They need the threat of a running game. So yeah, no, I absolutely get it.
But let's move off of the quarterbacks now, and let's move over to the weapons, and we'll start with the 4th overall draft pick, who I think he's definitely the greatest receiver I've ever scouted, maybe the best receiver prospect you've ever seen. That's Marvin Harrison Jr. This guy is...
What? You don't need to throw in the word receiver. You don't need to throw in the word maybe. For me personally, as someone that started scouting 2020, best prospect I've ever watched.
Oh, when it comes... Yeah. Best prospect I've ever watched. For sure, since I've been scouting, the maybe was 4 of all time, because there's a couple other guys you could throw.
No, but I'm not just saying receiver. I'm saying just straight up best prospect of any position I've ever watched. It is a crime he went 4th overall. It is. He should not have went 4th overall. I know Chicago shouldn't have drafted a receiver, but the point is he is a 1st overall pick caliber player.
Absolutely,
without a doubt. I would go as far as to say bust proof.
Yep.
And you watch his game. What is there to not like? I mean,
I said this. There is no weakness. I literally wrote down he has no weakness.
there is one area where maybe you want a little bit more. He's not Calvin Johnson in terms of physicality.
Sure.
But the speed is unreal. The speed is unreal. The route running, tremendous. Right? Tremendous.
The hands are
spectacular.
Absurd.
Contested catching ability to adjust with the ball in the air. Keep in mind the quarterback play was not good. Was not good at all.
Oh, Kyle McCord?
Kyle McCord was awful. Yeah, he was a bum. But let me tell you right now, if Marvin Harrison was in the Zoom call right now, he would not be calling him a bum right now. He'd be saying, I should have caught every ball he threw my way. Right? And this is my big thing with Marvin Harrison that takes him from a elite receiver prospect that I already love because of his film And even without this, he probably still would be the best prospect I ever watched. But considering this too, it makes him a must draft no matter where you're picking, no matter what your position needs are. His attitude and approach to the game, that is the type of stuff that made Jerry Rice Jerry Rice. That's what made Tom Brady Tom Brady. That is how legends are made. With that approach to the game that he has, we have heard reports out of training camp or out of OTAs that Jonathan Gannon and the coaching staff had to stop him from overworking. Right? We've heard nothing but good things about this guy, and then we've also, of course, all seen by now the clip in Hard Knocks of how humble he is, the Giants Hard Knocks in that combine interview. He had an opportunity, kind of a layup, to bash his quarterback. Brian Dable, I don't know if it was a test or not, but he was watching film with him, and he said, yeah, that was a bad throw, wasn't it? And then Harrison just said, I should catch that. Right? I should lay out and be able to make the play. And that just shows you how Marvin Harrison is as a person. And then again, we hear all this stuff about how he's such a hard worker. We've heard reports about Kyler Murray not being the greatest worker, right? Not going the extra mile. Normally it's the receivers getting the, or normally it's the quarterbacks getting the receivers to really work and put in that extra. It's going to be the young wide receiver making sure the veteran quarterback works and gets that extra, connection. And that, assuming it goes well, should ultimately lead this to being the Calvin Johnson, Matthew Stafford, the AB, and Ben Roethlisberger, the Gronk and Brady of this next 2020, right? 2020s, 2030s even. Like, we don't know. The sky's the limit here, man. And I'm so excited for it because Harrison is such a good player on film because he has the athleticism, but more than anything, it's how he works. I love it. Love the pick, love the player. This offense is going to be electric purely because of that connection between those two.
Yeah, like Harrison is he could be he could be a 1,400-yard receiver year one if they wanted him to.
He could lead the league in receiving yards. He can.
Yeah, like he's that good.
If they fall behind often, right? Let's say the defense doesn't have a great season, which some people predict that. I don't think it's going to be quite as bad as people think, but we'll get to that when we get to that. Let's say the defense is the worst in the league. They allow the most points in the league. I trust them in a shootout. I do. And I could see Marvin Harrison going for 250 yards in a random game in Week 9 as they go ahead and score 45 points to beat a team that scored 42. Right? I could absolutely see that.
Yeah, this offense needed a number one receiver, especially because the rest of the receiver room wasn't great. But there was a bright spot from last year, and that was rookie Michael Wilson. Mm-hmm. He's somebody I liked coming out of Stanford as kind of a developmental, maybe not even developmental, but like a high floor receiver coming out of college that could develop into a really good receiver. And he's in a really good spot to be this team's wide receiver too. He showed some good things last year, good connection with Kyler. I'm excited to watch how he works not being the top threat on this offense. He gets to be a secondary option, which is ideal for him at this point in his career.
Of course. And then you also got Zay Jones, who I think as a third option, pretty nice. You like to have a veteran like him, someone that knows how to settle in weak spots, zones, all that stuff. So
kind of an ideal wide receiver.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I think he's like the new Tyler Boyd, I would say.
Yes. I think that's a good comp, yeah.
And then we have some depth.
Behind him, we got Greg Dortch, who, I mean, you want to talk about ideal wide receiver 4? Greg Dortch is your guy. I love watching
Speedy, shifty. He's the traditional gadget, right? But then he could also make big plays down the field because of his speed. He's someone I like to have there.
For a gadget guy, he's got some good hands, too.
He's
a really
absolutely.
solid.
Absolutely. Zach Pascal is a capable, big target, big possession target. And then Chris Moore is also there. Like, I think they have a receiver core of guys that I trust. And I know they're going to be 2 tight end, 3 tight end a lot of the time, but you got to have guys that can catch the football. And their tight ends, I think when we look at them, and I know we're just about to look at them, but I don't think they're guys that really, demand the attention in the passing game. Besides McBride.
I was going to say, we could argue McBride there.
Yeah,
but still,
McBride, but I don't think he has like this Kelsey-like presence. I don't.
No, but let's just get to the tight ends real quick. We'll start with Trey McBride. had a fantastic season
Oh yeah,
last year, and
absolutely.
that
He
connection
was
with
their top
Kyler,
target. Yeah.
absolutely, and his connection with Kyler only grew stronger and stronger week by
Mm-hmm.
week. Trey McBride is going to be one of the best tight ends in football next year. It's just, I think that's what's going to be as a blocker, as a receiver. I'm not saying he's going to be Travis Kelsey,
Mm-hmm.
but if he's a top five,
I
finishes as a top five tight end, I'm not going to be surprised,
I think
especially in this
that
offense.
him having a season of that caliber is going to be more of him being the afterthought because Marvin Harrison goes out there and lights it up. And I
And I
think
fully
that will be
expect that.
more of the cause. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Don't get me wrong. Like Trey McBride, he did have a great season last year, but I didn't see him as even like a David Njoku type of guy because I see him. He settles in zones really well. Like I think that's his best trait, and of course that's what you want from a tight end in an offense like this. Like that's what you need. That's a very ideal trait, but he's not someone that really wows me with overwhelming, physicality. He doesn't wow me with overwhelming after catch ability or athleticism. Really, like
Maybe
I
not
like him.
overwhelming, but
Yeah,
I think he's good after the catch. I think he's
he's a
good.
well-rounded tight end for sure, for sure. But for me, a lot of his production last year was based off utilization, as opposed to top-end talent. Again,
And
like the
sure,
player.
but that's I'm more talking when I talk about top five tight end this year. I mean statistically,
Sure.
like
Okay. Yeah.
in this offense, he's a fantastic fit,
Hmm.
and they're going to use him a lot because this tight end, he's the tight end.
Yeah.
They love the tight ends here,
And they
but
need someone that could beat zone. Marvin Harrison can do that, but you want him
but
going
he's
for that
getting
home
double
run shot.
covered.
Yeah,
He's also
and he's
getting
getting
double
double
covered
covered,
everywhere.
right? I definitely think McBride is their best guy to beat zone after Marvin Harrison, for sure.
Right. But let's move off McBride and move to one of my favorite prospects in this whole draft. I was actually in the hospital when I talked to Pat here about this guy, Tip Ryman, the tight end out of Illinois. This guy was the best blocker in the entire draft by a large margin. And this is what we mean by made additions in this run game. He's going to play that tight end too and maul people here and just be like a nice receiving threat. And that's the thing. At Illinois, he wasn't even used very much, is the thing. He was more just simply a blocker. But like when given the opportunity, he had some good reps. He had good balance. He was pretty nice after the catch. He's got really solid hands. He's not going to wow you in that department, but we want to talk about, again, we talked about an ideal second option in Michael Wilson. Tip Ryman's the ideal tight end too. A good blocker who can catch the ball when you need him to. I love this addition to the offense.
This is a Nick Boyle to Trey McBride's Mark Andrews, right? That's the situation we got here. Like, he is going to be that guy that everyone remembers as the superb road grader blocker. Right? That's what he's going to be. And again, this is an offense that wants to run the ball. This is an offense that wants to run a lot of 12 personnel, wants to run a lot of 13 personnel. So, guys like Ryman are going to be huge assets despite the fact they're tight end too. Right? I also think it is important to mention because they run so much 13 personnel, they have Elijah Higgins, who is someone that, again, not going to be the best name on earth, but he does consistently make his blocks. He doesn't completely dominate people in the way that a Ryman does, but he'll go out there, get in the way, and he's very good at, like, how do I put this? Calculating where defenders are going to go and calculating the best angle to take
His
to
angles.
cut them
He's good at
off.
taking angles.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
cut them off from getting to the running back. I think it is a very, very
And you have to mention
consistent
him.
player.
He's an athletic guy. He actually was Michael Wilson's teammate. He was a receiver with Michael Wilson, and he was converted to tight end after the draft. And he's a good receiver. They lined him up plenty of times last year as that tight end too, and put him out wide and put him in the slot as a big slot guy. He's just somebody that they can move around, almost a gadget at a tight end position. He was a former Miami Dolphins legend for like 2 weeks before we let him go. So there's that to mention. But no, it's a really fun and nice tight end room.
Of course. Yeah, for sure. And they're going to utilize every head in that room, without a doubt. The running backs, of course, are important here. You're going to run the ball this much. They are important. We got to talk about the man who doesn't get nearly enough credit in James Conner, do
None.
we not?
This guy is good.
Yeah.
This guy is really good. He was a large, yes, this like offensive line was a good run blocking unit, sure. James Conner was a huge reason why this run game was so good. Everything from his vision, his ability to fall forward. He's the whole package at running back. He's a good receiver. Sure, he's not a home run hitter. He's
Yeah,
never
no,
gonna
no, he isn't.
run 60 yards for a touchdown. He's not that anymore.
He'll push the
Or I don't know
pile
if he
though.
really ever was that. He will push that pile though, and he'll find positive yardage, and he'll find the smallest hole in the offensive line and take off through it. He's a great runner. He's a
His
really good
vision
running
is a
back.
lot better than I think he gets credit for. I
Oh,
think I
absolutely. He's
think
got some of
some
the best
of
vision in the
that,
league.
yeah,
He's got some of
some
the
of
best vision in the
that
league.
playing behind Le'Veon Bell experience for like a year or two in Pittsburgh, I think definitely sticked with him. It definitely did
Yes.
because there are plays where he does a really good job staying patient, waiting for the blocks to develop, and then making the right cut. And he does it consistently. Like you said, he's a good receiver out of the backfield, just a very, very good running back. Right?
And like another thing I don't think he enough credit for is like really physical. He's tough to bring
Oh yeah.
down. His balance is up there. There's plenty of times where he did get hit in the backfield, and he was just
Yeah.
like, "Nope, stiff arm. I'll just bounce off you."
And
Actually,
he's a good pass blocker too. Like that's
he
something
is
we almost didn't mention.
on
He's
top of
someone
being a
that
good receiver.
yeah, he might be like the most well-rounded third down back in the NFL. I would say.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that.
Yeah, he does a really good job as a blocker, but then also as a pass catcher. And when you have someone like that, there's not many of those. Like McCaffrey is, of course, a great receiving back, but he can't block like James Conner, right? He's someone that you could send on like these block and release type of concepts, or have him block if he makes a certain read on a linebacker, he'll go out, make this cut, and now you got a 5-yard gain, first down, right? Like he's a very, very nice asset to have in a lot of different facets of the game.
And absolutely. And we'll move to the second not tight end, second running back. My guy. I know I was higher on him than you were in Trey Benson. Trey Benson was my top running back, by like absolutely for me. I had an early day two grade on him. I really, really loved what I saw from Trey Benson, and I love him as this complementary back to Connor, especially year one of like, this is a home run hitter. This is a guy that if you give him the block and he gets that angle, he could go 75 yards for a touchdown. Absolutely can. Super athletic. I compared him almost to my comparison to him was like a Joe Mixon kind of player almost, of just like he's got that kind of size when given the opportunity to receive in college, although he didn't get that a lot. He was good at it, and he's got that home run speed, especially like a young Joe Mixon had. So I think is a great compliment to this room. I would love to see what he develops into behind this offensive line and behind this offensive coordinator. So I'm excited about Benson. I know you're not quite as high on him, and that's okay. But I think he's a really nice ideal back two for this team right now.
More than anything, he's someone that could develop into something really nice maybe late this season. If he is
Yes.
to have a huge impact this year, I think it is as someone that maybe comes in when James Conner either deals with an injury he tries to play through, or just something happens that causes James Conner to take less time towards the end of the
I agree.
season.
I agree.
And as a result, Benson has a better understanding because he watched James Conner play. And James Conner is someone that I think seems to believe in the best interest of the team. There's a lot of guys like this in that locker room. And because of that, he'll try and help a young Trey Benson, someone that needs to learn how to stop running so high. Needs to, because listen, he could be a Josh Jacobs if he started to run low, but instead he runs way too high, and it's easy to bring him down because of that. Yes, he could, make a big play happen on any given down, but he could also make a tackle for loss happen because he's someone that is patient but makes bad decisions. And
I totally get what you're
it's a
saying there,
weird
yeah.
mix, right? He'll stand behind the line of scrimmage, wait for a block to develop, and it's like, yeah, you have the open hole. You don't need to. I know if hypothetically the tight end is able to get the right block here, you could bend the edge and then make a 50-yard play happen. But you could also just take the 5
He's got to
yards.
start learning to take the single, not always.
Yeah,
the home run,
exactly.
You know what I mean?
And I think more than anything, he's a big play threat. More
Yes.
than anything. Benson is someone I don't know if you have him as your X Factor, but I could definitely see that potentially as him being like a late season X Factor. for them as they try and make a playoff push late in the season. But yeah, I still like the running back room. Like, that's a nice duo.
Absolutely. And it's something just funny I want to talk about Trey Benson. There's talk about his tackles for loss, and yes, it appears on film because he wants to take that home run ball too much. But it's funny. I believe the stat is Florida State ran counter 40% of the time. I think the stat is.
Mm-hmm.
That's a ludicrous amount of counter for a play that sometimes results in a tackle for loss. So it's just something that's the case. I just wanted to mention that because I think it's really funny. But you look at the other backs in this room: Michael Carter, DJ Dallas. Nice pieces to have at the depth as depth pieces.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I'm glad that you said that because I wanted to hit on it. Amari DiMiccardo, of course, is a nice piece. Like, they have some guys that could go out there and play, right? For sure. Like,
Yep.
even, let's say that Benson isn't ready when James Conner potentially goes down. You throw Michael Carter out there, I could see him running for 100 yards in a game.
Yeah,
Like, I could definitely see that.
absolutely.
Same with Amari. I remember Amari was one of the better waiver wire pickups late last season, right? Like, there's guys here that you trust behind this offensive line, and I think a reason why is because this offensive line and just overall scheme is really good. Really good. Let's go ahead and talk about that because I think it's a good unit, right?
I think it's a good unit as well, and we'll start with the left tackle. Well, moving over from right tackle to left tackle now this year, at least that's what it says on the depth chart. Paris Johnson Jr. Uh, I loved him coming out of college. Well, I wouldn't say I loved him. I liked him a lot. I thought he was raw. I thought he had some footwork issues, but he had a nice rookie season for a tackle, especially playing on the opposite side of what he was used to playing in college.
Mm-hmm.
So I have high hopes for him at left tackle this year, going back to his original kind of sets and everything like that. And outside of the pass blocking aspect, which was more of my concern when it came to Johnson, he's a mauler in the run game. He's a big dude, a strong dude, really athletic tackle. He's a great fit for this offense.
Yeah. And that's exactly what it is, right? He's even in college, right? I would say he was raw as a pass protector a little bit,
I
but
agree.
as a run blocker, even in
Mauler.
college, he went out and he wasn't mauling people just off his strength and size, right? He was mauling people because he approached it with the right technique. He was.
Yep.
And this is a team that runs a little bit of everything, right? They'll run zone, they'll run gap. I think duo is kind of their go-to. Duo, trap, power. Like, they'll run that stuff out of shotgun. They like doing it a lot. It is a versatile run game where the offensive linemen have to know how to function in a gap scheme while also being enough of an athlete for a zone scheme. But guys like Paris Johnson do that. Okay, they do.
Yep.
Again, as a run blocker, that's really his highlight. That's really his highlight. He's a good player, and I'm excited to see what he does in year 2.
What can you tell me about the left guard spot in Evan Brown?
So Evan Brown, I would say he's definitely less refined. But I wouldn't say he's like this, oh my god, you need to exploit him type of guy. Like, I don't think he's a liability. I think he's more
I think
of like
he's
a
for
role
sure
player.
the weakest link along
Yeah.
this line, as we could say. But
He's
not
more of a
liability.
role player on this line. He's someone that opens lanes, for sure. But the down-to-down consistency isn't great for him. I wouldn't have been surprised if they replaced him, but I do think he is a starting caliber NFL player. Like, he'll go out there. If he's your weakest link, I don't think you're in too bad of a spot.
I agree, and I wanted to ask you about Evan Brown because they just drafted rookie left guard out of Illinois, Isaiah Adams, who not a great pass blocker, but he was a really good run blocker in college, and I think that's going to translate over to the NFL. He's a strong offensive lineman. They have another option there, is what we could say, and
Yeah.
it fits what they want to do. So you're not too worried about, even though it's the weakest link along their line, not something you're overly worried about.
Mm-hmm.
Then you got Hijalte Froholt, the center. Really underrated center, in my opinion. I thought he had a good season last year. Coming over, he was the backup in Cleveland, I believe is what it was. He came over last year and put together an underrated season. He's a starting caliber center. He's an above average guy in my eyes. Like, I feel very comfortable with him being
On the
guy
backside,
that
Phil, he's dominant. Right, and in a scheme like this, right, where you're running a decent amount of, plays where the guard is pulling, you're going to have a lot of backside fills for your center.
Yep.
And he doesn't just execute it; like he opens lanes by doing
He's
it.
really good at it.
Like if you wanted to, you can go ahead and treat that like it's the main Russian lane because he does a great job. Like he's consistently getting horizontal movement on the line of scrimmage by pulling from, or not pulling, but by filling backside. Like he does a very good job at it. And I think that's part of the reason that we look at the season he had last year and it really seems a lot better than he gets credit for. Because the backside fill, it's, I don't want to say an easy job, but it's an easier job than most other plays. But when you're able to actively have an impact because you're so good at it, I think that's when you really go out there and you say a lot with your ability to backside fill.
Right. And then we move to the right guard spot in Will Hernandez, and this is where we say this team has a type in the sense of big offensive lineman, really big offensive lineman that likes to maul people in the run game, and that's what Will Hernandez wants to do.
Exactly. Again, as an interior, just looking at it, I think like blitz pressers, right? The way that they try and not run blitzes, but when teams go ahead and try and throw a blitz at you that is clearly designed to beat the pass, I think they can kind of get exposed just because I don't think they have someone who's overly, they look at it and they're like, oh, yeah, if we see the linebacker crawl down from that position or the safety crawl down from his deep third and go ahead and rush, we're prepared for that. I don't see much stuff like that. I think it is an offensive line that can kind of be toyed with on the interior. But I also think they have a group of guys in that receiver room that get open quick. So, we'll see. I think the scheme does a good job working around that. I think if you try and blitz them, they'll do a good job getting around it, still making a play happen. But I do look at the offensive line on the interior mainly and say you can kind of expose it.
And then I don't know how you, and I don't know how you feel about the right tackle in Jonah Williams. I think he's all right at right tackle. I didn't think he was ever anything overly great. I don't think he's necessarily a liability, but I wouldn't say you feel amazing about him being there.
It's between him and Evan Brown for the two weak links. He's someone we saw that experiment in Cincinnati. It didn't go well, right? Now again, we've seen it, so I guess we know what to expect. But what we're expecting isn't overly great, right?
It's not. It's not awful, but it's nothing like you're not sitting there like, oh, I feel good about this either.
No, I'm not mediocre on it. I think it's a low end, one of the lowest end starters at that spot.
But a starter nonetheless.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Sure. Well, that's because it's just hard to get tackles.
Exactly.
Yeah. But I mean, there's very few offensive lines that are fine at all 5 spots, right?
Yep.
Generally, this is a good offensive line for sure, especially in the run game. In the run game, they're really good. But this is a good offensive line. I definitely like it, especially considering what they're trying to do. I am interested to see how they work around potentially getting exposed in the passing game. But still, it's a good unit.
And I think a large part of their plan is we have Kyler Murray back there, who's really hard to tackle, really hard to get a sack on. So I think maybe they're depending on that a little bit as well.
But, as you should.
Yes. And let's move on to the awards now. Offensive Player of the Year, who's your pick? For me, it's obvious. I'm taking Kyler Murray.
Yeah, I mean, Offensive Player of the Year. Call me crazy. I mean, I could definitely say Kyler Murray because someone's got to throw the ball. But I have the same guy for my Offensive Rookie of the Year as my Offensive Player of the Year. I have Marvin Harrison.
Double dip in here. That's fine.
I
almost picked him too.
Marvin Harrison, I could, like I said, if the game script goes the way some people think it might, I think he could lead the league in receiving yards. I really think he is that good of a player. I think he's going to be indisputably a top 10 receiver in the league after this year ends. And I'm kind of expecting him to be in the CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson tier of receiver. And I know it's a high bar, but you watch him play, it makes sense.
Watch him play, and it's like, it's a little weird if he's not. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
But and then Offensive Rookie of the Year for me, of course, Marvin Harrison Jr. It's not very
yeah. I mean, I was thinking maybe Tip Ryman goes here.
As bad as I'd like to, Believe it or not, he's got another award. He is my 12th man of the year. Tip Ryman
So
is.
yeah, we're in agreement.
There we go.
So far,
Hey,
this has been the rookie show. But
rookie
listen,
show.
when you're a young team, that's kind of what you're trying to do,
And
right?
here's another, like, to bring back a comparison I brought up earlier, in the sense of this team could be almost like a Texans team last year. Why was that Texans team a lot more competitive? They hit on their draft picks. They hit on their
Exactly.
draft picks. And when you hit on your draft picks, good things happen. And
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of what we're expecting here. Do you
Yeah.
have your X factor
No, I
on
don't.
the offense?
I
I do
don't.
not either. I do not
Okay.
either.
So now let's move over to the defense, right? This is a team with a defensive-minded head coach. And let me just say right now, the defense, it is very much like that offense is a modernized spread. This is the modernized Gus Bradley type of
Yeah.
thing, where you're
A
running the
lot of
same type of new concept that used to be like a specialty thing, and you're running it constantly.
every play.
Constantly. It used to be quarters spot drop, and then people were like, hey,
Switch it up,
yeah,
go to like,
yeah,
yeah.
you switch it up a little bit, but it used to be quarter spot drop. You do that on like third and long, 100% they're passing. And then people were like, yeah, but spot drop zone is kind of old. I want to do match zone. And I want to run quarters in match zone. And so match quarters, that concept was invented, which is very complex. It's the outside corner is going to read the release of the number 2 receiver, not the number 1, so the receiver closer inside. And if they release vertically, then the safety is going to take care of them, and they are going to go man-to-man with the 1. If they go out, then the outside corner is going to be responsible for that 2, or kind of be responsible for that zone. Like I said, very complex.
A lot of
It's a lot of
communication
communication.
required in the
If you're really
secondary. Yeah.
interested in it, I highly recommend you check out some videos because it is a pretty fascinating defense.
It's really fascinating
Yeah,
to watch how deep how they well
of
works.
course. But they run it all the time.
Every
Every
play.
down. Every
Every
down.
single play.
Yeah,
It's quarters, match quarters, every play.
exactly. And
And sometimes you watch the film and you're like, oh, they're finally running too high man. Oh no, that's just quarters.
yeah, and they are so good at mixing up the looks. They're so good because you see some of those looks and you're like, that's a zero blitz. That is not
Yeah,
going to be
zero.
match quarters. And then it starts. It's just like, holy shit.
It's like it's
They have 4 guys dropping deep, and we thought it was a blitz. We have 2 of our tight ends in pass protection right now, and they're rushing 4. I thought we were going to get a deep shot here. We can't do this. Throw the check down. And it's just...
take your check down.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, yeah. Josh Gannon literally just says every play, get ready to learn check down, buddy. Like that's
Yeah,
what that
exactly. And I think that's why they brought in some of the personnel they did. The only problem was that some of that personnel was a little bit disappointing. Will that be the case this year? We're going to dive into that. But, of course, it's not just going to be match. It's mainly going to be, but they are going to actually do what you think it's going to be. Like maybe once a quarter. Sometimes they'll show cover 1 and actually run cover 1, crazily enough. It is a very fun defense to watch, though. It just sucks because their personnel was awful last year. It was awful. Yeah, it's really... Oh, and I guess we gotta say what the personnel is. It's a 3-4 scheme. They run 3-4. That's what it is. I do think the roster is kind of more built to do this now, but now teams understand what they're getting into when they play against the Cardinals. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. I don't want to make it sound like he's predictable because he isn't. He will mix it up a little bit, but he wants to run quarters. And when he's not running quarters, he's running quarters because he has to run something else. Because if he always ran quarters, it wouldn't go very well.
Right. But let's start with the defensive line here.
Mm-hmm.
And there's not a ton of bright spots, I would say, but there is one big bright spot in their first round draft pick this year, who I know you were high on him too.
Oh, I love him.
I remember I
love
told you about him. Darius Robinson out of Mizzou. This guy is awesome. I love him. He just big 6'6", 285-pound individual that can play, is athletic enough to play off the edge, is strong enough to play on the interior. He's a chess piece you can move around on this defensive line. He's a big help to a defensive line that needed help kind of everywhere, and he can
Yeah.
play everywhere.
I think the versatility in terms of how you could utilize him is the main thing that excites me, right?
Yeah.
I was higher on Darius Robinson than most. I had him as my edge 3, right?
He was my
I
edge 4. Yep.
Yeah, I had him ahead of Latu. And it's not because I dislike Latu, but it's because I looked at Darius Robinson, I was like,
That's really funny. I had when it came to grades, like decimal points off between Latu and Robinson for me too.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And I just thought about like the best defenders in the league, right? The Micah Parsons, the Kyle Hamiltons. You use them in so many different ways, and that's why they're great, right? Darius Robinson is the same thing, right? He won't fill that same role, but the point is versatility. Every different play, you can line him up in a different spot in that defensive front, and he'll do a good job because a guy like Kyle Hamilton and a guy like Micah Parsons, they're versatile because they're athletes and they're so athletic. The defensive line equivalent of athleticism is just straight up strength. And Darius Robinson is so like unreally strong. I think he's gonna be a Khalil Mack that's utilized in different ways. I think he has the skill set of a Khalil Mack with more versatility.
He does.
I guess I would
watch
say.
when you watch this guy long arm an offensive tackle in college. It's literally like he's pushing a baby. Like, he's just one arm driving this individual into the quarterback. Like that is what happens.
And it's not just strength; it's strength with a unreal motor. Unreal motor. He is going to chase down runs from backside because he's also a great athlete. He is going to single-handedly cause pileups on the line of scrimmage while also endlessly, relentlessly chasing your running back, chasing your quarterback. I mean, I want defensive linemen that cause havoc. He causes havoc because he is a problem on any given snap. Any given snap. And again, when there's a player like that and you could use them in so many different ways, you can't just say, let's get the ball away from him, because he could be anywhere.
You don't know where he's going to be.
Exactly.
They could line up in something and then shift into something completely different.
Exactly.
It's like, oh, well, shit.
And he's still just as efficient. Yep. The only thing you could do is say, let's not run the ball. And let's only throw quick passes. That's all you could do. Because if you do run the ball a lot, someone's going to get hurt. And it's not going to be him. He's a really fun player to watch. He might be one of my favorites. Like, I'm a big Darius Robinson fan.
I am as well. I'm so glad we agreed on that. Then we look at let's stick with edge rushers here, and I want to talk about Zaven Collins, because this is somebody who was drafted to be more of a middle linebacker.
Yeah.
Like that's what he was drafted to be. Wasn't working out in the way you'd like. Last year, Gannon says, "Hey, you're a big dude. You're an athletic dude. Let's see what you can do off the edge." And for the most part, he did fine. Like, he was pretty good at it. And I'm excited. He's still a younger player, still a really athletic, multiple piece. You hope he can keep developing into a good edge rusher.
I think the fun thing with him, right, he played kind of that, like, a jack linebacker role where he was, I don't want to say a Kyle Van Noy, but he was...
I think that's a really good comp,
yeah,
actually.
But here's how I'm going to phrase this. As a player, he is Kyle Van Noy. But he's Kyle Van Noy being utilized kind of like how the Eagles, with Jonathan Gannon, utilized Hassan Reddick. Right? Now, it's going to be more coverage and more spot dropping, less blitzing. But still, he plays that same kind of role where, what's he doing, right? He is a jack linebacker. Right, that's what he is. He's a Kyle Van Noy playing a little bit more of a defensive line role.
Yep,
that's how I see him. And again, he does a good job at it, 100%. When I first,
yeah, what he is.
When I first saw him switch positions, I was like, he's big. He's bigger than most off-ball linebackers, but really? And you know what? I'll give them their credit. It worked.
Yes.
It worked.
It was the best year of his career, I would
Yeah,
say.
exactly. He isn't a stud, but he plays his role. He's a role player.
Yep.
I mean, good player.
Other edge rushers to mention here: B.J. Ojolari heading into
Love him.
his second season.
Love him.
Really like him. I liked him coming out of the draft last year. Coming out of the draft, maybe not the highest ceiling individual, but he came in with like really high level pass rusher for his age. Nice, really deep bag of pass rush moves, and that showed up.
That's it.
And that showed up. That deep bag of pass rush moves. He's got everything. A spin move. He can rip, push, pull. He can do whatever he wants. He's got a whole arsenal.
More than anything, it is, of course, the get off. The get off at the snap. Great. But it's that threatens you. And then offensive linemen just having no clue what to expect. Because he does it all. Like you said, he does it all. There's not a single move that he doesn't have.
He's got an entire pass rush planned out in his head pre-snap.
Exactly.
He's like, I did this last time, but here's this I pulled out 2 drives ago. That was completely different what I just did.
Yeah. Worst case scenario, he's just a third down pass rusher. But I could see a world where you try and force him and Zaven Collins onto the field at the same time. Like, I think that's really what we're going to see go on here. I think they are going to be rotating him on the field because he's a better player than just a third down pass rusher. Is he a pass rush specialist? Probably. But I do think he's someone that could go out there and still contribute, set the edge against the run. Right.
And the last edge rusher I kind of want to talk about here is Dennis Gardick, who's just like, you want to talk about third down pass rusher. That's what Gardick is. He's really good at getting pressure and getting to the quarterback, at least for what he is. He's a smaller guy. Actually, he's really small considering what you would look at for an edge rusher. But another guy, just really nice bag of pass rush moves, has a good feel for the game, knows, really smart player. Just nice guy to have in the back. And every so often, he'll pop off for 3 sacks once a year because it happens every year for some reason. It's a nice guy to have his depth.
Of course. And then we got to look at that interior defensive line because I think that's an area where
it's improved from last year.
It's improved, but it still is like
still bad.
That's where I think they're going to get beat, and that's where I think maybe even Darius Robinson, who's an edge rusher, him being there when he plays on the interior, you put B.J. Ojolari on the edge. And then you have Collins on the other edge. That's a good spot. I do like it.
Good. Yeah. And like Bilal Nichols and Justin Jones, again, a lot better than what they had last year.
Yes.
Straight up.
Yes.
It's not great, but you're not like sitting there like, oh man, this is awful. Like it was last season.
Mm-hmm. And then they do have Kairos Tonga, which is a body you could get out there.
Nose tackle type of player.
Yeah. Listen, they're not going to consistently get it done. Like, I do think teams are going to run on them a pretty decent amount unless Darius Robinson does Darius Robinson things. But
which is possible.
Yeah, which is possible. But he is someone I look at and I'm just like, or this defensive line group on the interior is a group I look at, I'm like, that's where they're going to get attacked. Like, that's what it is.
And one guy I want to mention one more time in the interior defensive line is Dante Stills. More of a pass rushing defensive tackle. Again, he's not a very good run defender, but he got some moves to him. He's got some juice, some athleticism. That's what he was coming out of West Virginia. Just a guy I wanted to name.
Yeah, no. Again, they have a rotation, but I don't think anyone's getting it done consistently. That's the reality here.
So let's move off of defensive line and let's move to the linebackers, and we'll start with Kaiser White, this team's Mike linebacker. Good interior. He's a good linebacker, man. He's a guy that Philly missed a lot last year with their linebacker problems.
Yeah. I will say this about Kaiser White. I do think that Gannon brought him in with the expectation that he would be a better coverage guy. Because he was in Philly. He was one of the best.
He was a good guy. He was a really good guy.
But with Arizona, he really wasn't too great. And I think they put a lot on him. I think, again, part of the reason teams were able to check down so much was because he didn't do a great job in a match quarter scheme that really needed him to constantly shut down the stuff across the middle of the field, and he just didn't do a great job at it. This is a scheme that puts a lot of trust in him, and he doesn't He was kind of getting exposed in some games. He was. And I think that could be fixed. Again, it was 1 year. The year before that, he was very good. So, maybe you expect a bounce back here. But
And
he is a smart
you're hoping for
linebacker.
it.
Yeah.
You're hoping for it. And
Mm-hmm.
then the guy next to him, which on the step chart is going to be Chris Barnes coming out of Green Bay.
Mm-hmm.
That he's just kind of average run defending linebacker that you have. He can do a little bit in coverage, but nobody you're overly excited about.
I will say this: the trait of his that really excites me, when he engages with blocks, he's not moving. He's strong.
Yeah, he's a good run. He's
yeah.
a strong dude.
Yeah, he's a strong guy. Now again, I wouldn't say he's the greatest run defender on earth because I don't think he has a great read as to where to go when he does engage the blocks, but he is kind of like a Stonewall type of dude. Like, he's strong.
Yeah. When it comes to guys you can mention on the depth, Mac Wilson, good in coverage as a linebacker,
Yeah.
somebody I could see maybe not excel, but be a good piece in this match quarter scheme. And you might as well mention Owen Papau, or however you say his name, really athletic guy. And again, my mindset when you draft linebackers, especially later rounds, take the most athletic ones and try and teach them how to play linebacker. And that's what he is. He was awful at Auburn in my eyes. He was not good. But he's here, and maybe Gannon can coach him up because he's got the athleticism.
And again, maybe it gets to a point where defense is real looking bad and they just need a spark. Maybe you throw out a freak athlete, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if anything, worst case scenario, if Gannon decides to go that freak athlete route, he could definitely do it, and it'd work well, right? Like, he has some freaks if you look at this roster.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I mean, I could definitely understand them going ahead and doing that late in the season as kind of a desperation play. But most likely, I think Mac Wilson and Chris Barnes are going to fight for that starting job.
I agree. So let's move off of the linebackers now and move to this secondary, which another team that's much improved from last year in my eyes. It's still a little suspect, but I have reason to believe it can be pretty damn good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Like, I'm in agreement here. They brought in a rookie in Max Milton that I think is going to have an important role on this team, even from day one. He has speed, and when I say speed, I mean unreal type of speed. Can he process a match quarters type defense like this?
Do you think he starts day one?
Uh,
I would argue Kytro Clark's probably the starter on that cornerback because he played last year, day one, is what I would imagine. Considering, because I think Max Melton's kind of a raw. I'm just thinking of from he's still a raw athlete in that perspective.
No, I get that, but there were so many plays last year where this Cardinals defense single-handedly just got beat by freak athletes. Like that's what happened.
Totally.
Constantly. And how do you beat freak athletes? You get freak athletes of your own.
Freak athletes.
Yeah. Like, that's what it is. Because they're not gonna catch teams off guard this year. You have to have guys out there that could go stride for stride with Tyreek. Go stride for stride with some of these superbly fast wide receivers. And that's why I think Max Milton is gonna have to start day one. Not because I think he's like this day one starter type of player, but because they need him to be a day one starter type of player. And hey, maybe Gannon, maybe this is going to be coaching job of the year over here, right? Maybe. I think it's on Gannon to really get him to be to that caliber. But yeah, I think he's going to be an important player, whether he's day one starter or not.
Although he's the first cornerback we talked about, this team's CB1 is Sean Murphy-Bunting, coming over from Tennessee. Mm-hmm. And I'm excited to see him in this match quarters style of offense.
So my thing,
offense, right? Defense.
My thing here is in a match last year, it was a lot of cover 3 for him. He was with Tennessee. It was a lot of soft zone coverage, and he had the worst season of his career. He did. He had an awful season statistically. You look at the coverage percentage, right? The amount of yardage he allowed, it was his worst season. And now it's like a man principle type of zone scheme. So that's kind of back to basics for him. But he's still not doing the tight man coverage, jam him at the line of scrimmage type of stuff.
Right. And I can agree with that. But I think this is better defense to utilize the athleticism that he has and allow him to be more in that man coverage style of scheme, because he'll have
Sure.
his plays where he gets to be in man
Yeah,
instead of that soft zone that he ran over there.
of course. And even in match quarters, like it still has man principles, but
Yes.
to me I want to see. I'm interested in seeing it.
And that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see him in this
Yeah.
defense.
I'm
Because he's a
not
better player than he's a better
sure.
player than he played last
Yeah.
year. I think he was in a wrong scheme.
I personally am leaning more towards him just being like he needs to be in his type of scheme where he's in tight man coverage and that's it. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Gannon sees something I don't. Maybe he can play in a max quarters defense like this and still be pretty good. I personally am pessimistic towards this stuff.
That's fine. And we'll move to the nickel, the slot cornerback. Garrett Williams is going to be the starter. I was a huge Garrett Williams guy when he was coming out of college. I loved what I saw on tape. And when they took him, I was the biggest Garrett Williams fan I knew, and he was still like my 6th-minute corner in that draft. So that should tell you. I was excited when they took him. And in the small, because he got hurt in college the year prior, so he didn't play to start the year. It took him a bit to get on the field. But he showed some good things on the field and the season with interception. He's a physical player. I think he's a fine tackler at that position. I'm excited to see him and how he's utilized in year 2. I think there is a world where the corners on the outside aren't doing all that well, and Williams is thrusted out to his outside cornerback spot, which he played in college, and I think he could be fine. I think he'll struggle athletically there, but I think he's a fine slot cornerback to have, and if he's not doing it, then Starling Thomas, I think, can do it too.
I mean, I just wanted to get the numbers really quick. He played 300 snaps last year, so there's not there's a decent amount of volume. I guess I saw some of the worst snaps from him because I entered this expecting both of us to kind of gang up a little bit on a Garrett Williams here. I didn't think he was like worst player on earth, but I didn't think he was a starter. To me, it didn't look that way. You clearly feel more optimistic about him.
Yeah, I feel more optimistic because of what I saw in college, and 2, again, this is a guy that missed training camp, that missed this, that missed that, and didn't get on the field until halfway through the year. And even so, had some bad reps, but also had some good reps. Also showed some promise in some games. So I'm a bit more optimistic because of what I think of Williams as a player. But again, I think if he's not doing it, I think Starling Thomas can play it too. Yeah. And I think we'll get to the safeties, but I think Adrian Taylor-Demerson can do it too.
To me personally, it looked like there was a reason that they are a base 7-man box. Right. There's a reason they don't want 3 corners out there because corner is probably their weakest group. And you got to keep in mind, this is a scheme that demands a lot from their corners, without a doubt. So, yeah, I mean, I'm in agreement with you in the sense that if he's not going out there, they have other guys that they could put out there, and the drop-off isn't too big. So, yeah, I mean, again, they are built more around their front.
I think there's worse nickels in the league is kind of where I'm at with this. I think there are worse nickels in the league.
Sure, so, that's fair. That's fair.
And now, I think there's reason to have some belief that the nickel spot could be good this year. Is where I'm at with this.
But. Yeah, again, he's a young guy. His film in Syracuse wasn't too bad. I agree. But I want to look over at that safety room because I think this is an area where I think some people might look at this and say, oh, yeah, that's the greatest group ever. Some people might look at this and say, yeah, they have one guy, but I really don't know much about the other guy. But I think my perspective on this is a perspective I don't think enough people have. If I could just uncork it right now, I look at this and I see a safety I thought was really surprising in Jalen Thompson.
Oh, he's good.
He was really good. He was
good.
Really good.
And I don't know if we have the same take here, but I think he's better than Budda Baker is.
Okay, so you know what? We are in agreement. I didn't know how uncommon that was. I was trying to find the best way to sugarcoat
I don't think
that.
I think it's still uncommon because of the name, but no, I agree. I think Jalen Thompson was better than Baker was last year.
Are we in agreement, Budda Baker? There was a fair share of plays where he was kind of exposed. I'm not gonna say he's bad. He's a good safety.
Yeah,
He's a
I said I
good
was
safety.
surprised they didn't trade him. Personally,
Really? Do you think it's a scheme thing with Baker?
yes, sorry. I think it's a bit of a scheme thing. I think he lost a little bit of a step. I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't think he's quite the player he was maybe 2 years ago.
So there
Personally,
we go.
like
Okay,
I
I
just
didn't know that that was a common take. So I'm glad we're in agreement here.
I don't think it's common.
Okay.
I
Well,
don't think it's a very
I didn't
common
know.
take.
I felt like
Personally,
I was the one person that saw through the matrix here.
I was surprised they didn't trade him.
Hmm.
Yes, I was a bit surprised. They just especially because he wasn't playing very well, and at least majority of the like actual NFL media community still thought pretty highly of Baker, and I was like, get what you can for him right now. Then this
Yeah.
is again a team that's not winning first of all, and
Yeah.
two just didn't play very well.
Yeah. Well,
Like
he does his thing still. He still is the
he does.
box safety that's gonna hit people and meet people at the line of scrimmage and make play. Like he absolutely is, and he's instinctive
Maybe,
without a doubt.
maybe not play very well is the wrong word for it. He wasn't a good fit for this game. It didn't look like
Yeah.
it.
So you do think it's a scheme thing because there's not many plays where he's
I
going
do
down to the
think it's
line.
a scheme thing. I
Yeah.
do think it's a scheme thing. I also think he's lost a step. I won't lie. I don't think he's
I think
quite the
he's
same
lost
player.
it. He used to be more well rounded.
Yes.
He's not a great coverage guy anymore. He really isn't.
No, not really at
And
all.
there are plays
Especially in
where
man. When they did have to go to man, I thought he was really good. Like bad. Like I thought he was bad in man coverage.
well, no, I thought that there was a. He's really instinctive and he knows a lot when facing the run. Like he knows where the play's going. He knows how to engage blocks. I didn't see this overwhelming understanding of like covering different route concepts that are supposed to beat certain concepts. Like again, he got exposed on some like big like 40-yard, 30-yard plays. It happened pretty often. Again, I think he's good. I'm not calling for him to get benched, but
Yeah. Yeah, of course.
he's someone that might be a little bit more one-dimensional, a little bit less versatile than we thought he was. I don't know if that's
I agree.
scheme or what, but
And I think that's a large reason of why they drafted Adrian Taylor Demison. I think they know Buda Baker's fit and time with this team is up sooner rather than
yeah.
later. And Adrian Taylor Demison's a great fit. And I actually expect him to get on the field a good amount this year, whether it is filling in for Baker at some points or playing in the slot. Like, I don't know if I ever told you this. He was my top safety in the draft. I
Really?
was huge on Adrian Taylor Demison.
Wow.
I thought he was really good. And I thought they got a steal. Again, when they got Tip Ryman, they got Adrian Taylor Demison, and they got Trey Benson. They read the DeanoTalksSports handbook. And Darius Robinson. They drafted accordingly, man.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, clearly. The only thing is Max Melton. You don't love that, but you like
I like
yeah.
him. No, I like the pick. It was more just like I don't know if he starts day one.
Yeah, he's not one of your guys. But
not one of my guys.
I want to hit a little bit more on Jalen Thompson because he was someone who was like we said he's good. We agreed that he's better than Buda Baker. But man, we got to admit this is a scheme that's difficult to run, not because you're responsible for so much area. Like for a safety, mainly you have one of the deep fourths, right? That's not much space. It's not difficult physically. It's difficult because
it's mental.
Mental
thing.
Yeah, because in match quarters, if you blink too fast, or blink at the wrong time, your responsibility completely changes, and you don't know.
We mentioned it while we were talking about the scheme. It's a defense that requires a ton of communication and a ton of actual understanding of what you're running.
Yeah, exactly. And again, we're not even getting into, if you see a 3-by-1 look instead, it changes in this way. And then the little wrinkles that Gannon might add sometimes, where maybe he'll have a linebacker responsible for something a safety is normally responsible for. Like, stuff changes all the time. And it doesn't seem like there's many moments where Jalen Thompson isn't prepared. It doesn't. He's someone that goes out there and he coverages his little zone. He does a good job in it. He is perfectly fine in man coverage. He does all that stuff. Like, he's a very good coverage guy, and he's smart. Like,
on top of being a good coverage guy, he's also a good tackler. Like, he's a really good tackler from the safety position.
Yeah, for sure. But that is it for the defense. Let's move over to Defensive Player of the Year. Who do you have here?
This is a tough one, man.
It is. It is.
I am gonna go with Jalen Thompson because I think he's the best player on this defense.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my pick. But you go ahead. Who's yours?
So I'm also going Jalen Thompson here.
Good.
We've agreed on everything so far, despite this being one of the more difficult teams. But
Yeah.
I guess as two people that were high on the Cardinals and kind of like we agreed on all of these rankings in a Discord call. For those of you that don't know, and in that call, I think both of us went in kind of expecting, oh man, I wonder what he's going to think when I say the Cardinals should be here. Like, we came in with our own rankings. And both of us had the Cardinals in this area, and we were just like, oh shit.
So we actually had them lower. And then we looked back at it, and we were like, that's too low. We have to put them up lower.
Did we have them lower? Oh, yeah.
We did.
They were one of like the three teams we changed.
We moved them up. Yes, we did.
Yeah.
And we wanted to move them higher, but again, we settled on the fact that
it
felt
we were
too much
like, yeah, exactly.
Yes. Because at the end of the day, this is roster we're looking at the end of the day, too.
Yeah, roster, scheme, how it all fits together, culture. But we can't project too much, right? But yeah, I just find it so interesting. These awards shouldn't be so easy, but so far, we've been on the same page. Defensive Rookie of the Year.
We're going to be on the same page for defensive. Well, we might not be. We might not.
There's some guys, but I think we are on the same page. I'm afraid.
Yeah, it's Darius Robinson.
It's Darius Robinson. But like, don't let the fact it's an easy choice distract you from Max Melton potentially, even though you might agree potentially. Definitely
on what happens with Slot and Adrian Taylor Demerson, or what happens with Buda.
Yeah.
Adrian Taylor.
Like, they have some guys. They definitely do. Now X Factor. What do you have here?
You go first. You go first.
If me and you had the same one, do you have Max Melton?
I do not have Max Melton.
Is it Kaiser White?
The same one.
Is it Kaiser White?
It's not Kaiser White.
Those were the two I was thinking.
No, the X factor for me was Sean Murphy Bunting. I think
really?
if you can go back being in that man coverage kind of maybe not man coverage, but having more man principles, getting away from that cover 3 soft zone and going back to what he was with the Bucks, having a good corner helps this defense out a lot because right now they don't have one for sure.
Yeah, so both of us were in agreement it has to be a corner because I went Melton.
Has to be. Has to be.
Again, I look at it though. I say they need to have not just a good corner. They need to have a good corner that could be an athlete, and that's what Melton is. And that's why I say that he's the X factor here. I think it's, for me personally, it's between him and Kaiser White because we went over how important it is for Kaiser White to have a bounce back year.
Right.
So, okay.
But no, so we had one difference, but it was the same position, so what's it matter?
Let's move over to special teams now, right? Okay. Matt Prater, very good, very consistent kicker for a while. He's able to consistently get kicks from long range and make them. Good player, right? Blake Kilken is a player that doesn't get nearly enough respect. He had the 4th most yards per punt in the NFL last year with 50.6 on 51 punts. So, also, very good player. They have a good punter-kicker duo. Always important. Right? In terms of returners, there's 2 names, obviously. Greg Dortch, DJ Dallas. Is there anyone else you're willing to say maybe?
Absolutely.
Who?
I think if Max Melton isn't starting year 1, I think they could totally put Max Melton back there with his speed.
Yeah. For me,
he can do it.
My only thing is Dortch and Dallas are really good at returning kicks.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's like, why do you do anything different?
I thought you were more just asking who else could.
No, they have other guys that could, but who else can compete with those two? Yeah.
No, I agree. Those are both fantastic returners.
Yeah. But is there anyone besides Melton, maybe, you see?
I think if Connor's staying healthy, I think Trey Benson could be a guy back there too. He's got a lot of speed. Yeah. So
maybe Benson doesn't look great in practice. He's not really refining his vision. Then you're just like, okay, we got to get him to contribute somehow. I could definitely see that. I think that's a really good one, actually. Like, if they decide we need a touchdown on a kick return, I think he's the guy. Right? Because Dortch, I think, could get the most yards per return. Same with DJ Dallas. But Benson is the biggest home
Benson
run.
In the sense of home run. Exactly. He's a home run guy.
Mm-hmm. Now, in terms of other special teamers, I looked into some of their special teams film. They have a couple of guys that like have been contributors for a while. Bobby Price had a lot of special team snaps last year, and he was a huge contributor to their punt team. We got Jesse Lucetta. He had 281 special team snaps last year, which is wild.
Damn,
Uh,
that's a lot.
yeah, Zach Pascal was a nice
Jack
special
Pascal,
teamer
yeah.
in the past. Then Joey Blunt was another guy who has had a role for them for a while in terms of like
Chris Moore will do some special team stuff.
yeah. And then in terms of guys who haven't really had much of a role in the past, whether that's because they're rookies or whatever, that could go out there and really contribute, I think Mac Wilson, if he's not getting much time, could absolutely. I definitely look at it and say that Tip Raymond,
Oh,
probably
dude,
the
I
most
can't
exciting.
wait. Yeah,
Probably
I
the most
cannot
exciting.
wait to see what they draw
Yeah.
up with him as a blocker.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. I think Owen Papau, however you say his last name, I keep
Owen
butchering
Papau
it,
is
but
another guy, yes,
yeah,
for
he's a
sure.
guy, just athletic
Mm-hmm.
linebacker. He probably won't get a ton of play time this year. Just throw
Yeah,
him out there on special teams.
for sure. And, that's what you want to do. You want to throw those freak athletes out there. They got a lot of freak athletes, right?
Yes.
Now, let's go to prediction for the season. For my ceiling, I had 11-6. Floor, I had 7-10.
So I had the same ceiling as you. My floor ended up being 6-11. So
Okay, so
we
we'll
were
do
wrong.
6-11 for the floor. What was your prediction?
My prediction for this team this year is they are going to go. It's a lot. I think they're going to go 10-7. I think they're going to get double-digit wins.
I had 9-8. So I find that interesting. Despite you having the lower floor, I had the higher prediction.
Which is interesting. It is interesting. I do think there's
Or
a world
you
where
had
this
the higher
defense is
prediction.
bad. Like,
Yeah.
I think there's a world where this defense is quite bad.
That's
The
fair.
film, they get the film on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So I think that floor is a bit lower.
Mhm.
But I'm confident. I'm confident in this offense. I'm really confident in this offense. I think this is going to be one of the top 10 units in the league.
Yeah,
Like,
for
think
sure,
that's
for sure.
Yeah,
10,
so,
I think, is the floor, really.
yes. So I think this team will come in have double digit wins. It's really a matter of how they perform in division for me.
It is important to mention their schedule is tough.
Yes.
Right, so let's look at this, right? Week 1, you're playing against Buffalo. In Buffalo. That's tough, man.
It's tough, but at least you're not playing them in the winter.
Yeah.
This is Josh Allen having to play with a new receiving core.
Honestly, though, I kind of like this game more for the Cardinals in the winter.
Yes. Really? Yeah, in the sense of they're running the football.
Yeah.
Right? But considering what the Bills might want to do this year in the sense of they want to run the football against this defense, it's tough.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
that's fair.
I think it's a very winnable game for the Cardinals, especially again because this is Josh Allen kind of getting to know Keon Coleman and Curtis Samuel a bit and
That's
getting
fair.
this offense.
That's fair. So you know what? We'll give the Cardinals this one, right? We'll mention. I mean, we don't really predict the games on here, but we kind of say like if we're leaning a certain way. I think we're leaning the Cardinals on this one, surprisingly. Yeah. Then you play against the Rams in Arizona. How do you feel?
It's tough because this Rams team is good. You're feeling better because it's at home. Yeah. I don't know. This is kind of a toss up for me. It all depends on how good this Cardinals team is early on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I would probably still lean Rams because the Rams are really good. But since it's at the Cardinals, I can give it to the Cardinals too.
I think that Rams pass rush is going to be a problem for them. For me, I'm going to say the Cardinals here. And then Detroit, I think...
I think Detroit would run all over them personally.
Detroit, I think this might be their worst matchup.
Yes.
Because of that, and we talked about it, against blitz-heavy teams that do creative stuff. I don't know how that interior is really going to stick with it because they're not... They don't have, like, the smart... I'm not insulting their intellect, but they don't have the ability. They don't have players that kind of been there, seen that, right, on the interior. Anywhere on the offensive line, really. And I think Detroit is going to pick that apart with Aaron Glenn and how he likes to draw some of his stuff up. Washington, I think that's a win. I think that's
it's
a
win for sure. Yeah.
And then at San Fran, I could see an upset.
I actually think I think they're gonna split regardless. I don't know if it'll be at San Fran or if it's at the Cardinals, but I think they're gonna split.
I don't. I could. If one were to win both games, who would you say?
Is it bad that I want to say the Cardinals?
Well, I was gonna say I think the Cardinals.
I think it's the Cardinals.
Yeah.
Like I think it's tough to say. Like a little spoiler for this 49ers team. I'm not going to give the ranking away or anything. We just it's a really good team still. It's just a flawed football team is what it is.
Yeah.
It is a flawed football team.
And I think Gannon, being the coach he is going to expose some of the weaknesses there. I think so.
Brock Purdy.
Well, not just Brock Purdy, the offensive line.
But the offensive line. The offensive line. We'll get to them when we get to them, all right? But,
yeah.
So I think
at Green Bay, this one, I think Green Bay's passing attack lights them up. I'm sorry. I do. And I think
not only the passing attack, I think they might run all over them too. This is going to be a good run game.
Yeah, that's fair. That definitely, I think Green Bay for sure. I think this also might be their worst matchup. It's tough. I think they match up really poorly against them.
Yeah, I agree. And then we go to Chargers Cardinals. I'd feel pretty confident saying the Cardinals here.
Do you?
I do. I get that the Chargers are going to want to run the football and all that. I do. I think this Cardinals offense matches up well defensively against this Chargers defense.
That's true.
Matches up well offensively against this Chargers defense. And it really depends on where
this is another blitzing team, though. This is another blitzing team that throws some creative stuff.
It is a blitzing team, but we're looking at a guy like we kind of talked about in the Chargers video. I don't know if they're going to be. They have a chance to be competitive this year. I don't think it's really going to happen. We don't know. Could they have sold Mack at the deadline or Bosa at the deadline? This. Where's this Charger? It all depends on how this Chargers team is. Chargers team is a team with a lot of variance and how good they're going to be.
You're right, but I think no matter what, this is a game where I think the Chargers play spoiler. That's really how I look at this, man.
That could totally happen.
Because again, I look at the scheme fit, right? What are the Cardinals bad at? Defensively. Defending the run. Okay.
Defending the run.
The Chargers run the ball. Okay. What about offensively? Can the Cardinals just simply outscore them? No, because I don't think they're going to be great against the blitz. Chargers blitz a lot.
Well, how good do you think this Chargers defense is going to be against the run? Especially in the middle of the field, especially through the defensive tackles. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, Khalil Mack, I still think is a good run defender.
Of course, but when you've got all the gap and the duo, they're going to run up the middle with James Conner. It's tough. Right. It's a tough matchup for the Chargers.
You're right. Okay. At Miami. I feel
pretty confident saying Miami wins this one.
I feel that way too. Listen, that passing attack. This is the game where they're going to need Max Melton to look good. But even
Max Melton needs to cover Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle.
Yeah, and that's the thing. They pass the ball with such efficiency over the middle. This is also where Kaiser White needs to look good. I also think McDonald knows how to expose a defense like this, this
is one of those games where this is Tua picking you apart. Picking your zone apart. You know what I mean? That's just how it's going to be because you can't play man, even if you wanted to with your corners. So.
Now versus Chicago, how are we feeling?
It's interesting. This is an interesting matchup. I think Chicago defensively matches up pretty well into this Cardinals offense. I'm more I don't know. I think Bears could play spoiler here.
I take Arizona because I think they, at this point, I'm kind of expecting them to have a decent amount of losses, or at least a decent amount of tight games. I think they're going to be more battle tested, and I don't think that Shane Waldron is going to really be able to attack that defense too much. Because I don't think schematically he has what it takes to beat a match quarters defense like this. I don't. I think this is a game where the Cardinals defense looks pretty solid. And that's enough for
you would hope
one of these better offenses to kill them.
It's just you kind of wonder of they're 3, 4 wide receivers deep right now. Is this secondary going to be able? Like, I get not attacking match zone, but
Mhm.
is there somebody that's going to stop Roma Dunze from getting that contested catch or
Well,
Keenan
but
Allen
we've
from?
seen in the past the scheme can do that.
Right.
And these
Okay.
players are
So
better than
I
last year. Like,
yeah.
maybe this defense is bad. Is it going to be quite that bad that every game they're allowing 40?
So that's the thing. I don't necessarily think this Cardinals defense is gonna be that bad. I think it's gonna be a pretty average unit.
Mm-hmm.
But like I do think teams with good receiving cores are gonna have their
Well,
way
but then
in
the
a way.
problem is you look at this entire schedule. How many bad or even mediocre receiving cores do you see?
Right.
I see
Uh,
several receiving cores that are going to give them problems.
yeah,
So then I
absolutely.
ask, you gave them 10 wins in this schedule.
Well, because I think this offense can keep up. I think this offense
Ah,
matches up really well. Again, like matches up super well in the Chargers. I think the Bills are that. I think getting the Bills early on is a big help.
mm-hmm.
They get the Cardinals. Like again, right now, again, I think a lot of their wins come near the end of the season. We're getting
Yeah.
to their wins right now. So
Mm-hmm.
right now, I'm thinking they're about 500, if not like a game
Yeah.
under.
Okay. Then the Jets.
I feel pretty confident saying the Jets can win this one if Rodgers is healthy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And then we get
I
to
think that's fair. Then you get
then
the
we get the
bye week,
Cardinals,
then Seattle.
then Seattle. I think Cardinals offense off a bye week against a Seattle defense with, you know, Will McDonald's coaching it, but as we've seen, you have to get your players. McDonald likes to get his players into the building, and it took a year or two for
Mm-hmm.
his defense to really start rolling. I think they beat Seattle both times
I
personally.
also don't think the run defense there is going to be anything phenomenal. I
No.
think the Cardinals might just run on them all day long.
Yep. And
Minnesota.
we get to Minnesota. This is an interesting one because they have the weapons that they do. It's a really good offense. It all depends on the quarterback with Minnesota. Is McCarthy starting at this point, and is Gannon gonna trick McCarthy into throwing 3 picks? You know what I mean?
But then at
So
the same time, Flores is damn good defensive coordinator by himself. And the blitzes, I don't know.
right, but this is where this is one of those games where I could see Marv go for 200 yards. Right,
That's
like
fair.
they
That's
don't have a
fair.
corner that can match up 1-on-1 with
Yeah.
Marv in
And
those
you're
heavy
right. And
blitz.
you're right. That's completely fair. Now, Seattle again. We think the Cardinals beat Seattle both times, right?
Yep.
Yep.
Then you
Okay.
got the Patriots at home. I feel so confident in saying the Cardinals beat these
Yep.
guys.
Then the
You got the
Panthers, of course, that's a win for the Cardinals, right?
That's a
We
win
feel
for the
good about
Cardinals.
that.
Yep.
At the Rams
Ram.
and then versus San Fran. We got two straight divisional matchups. How do we feel?
So I feel like this being in the Ram, I think this will be a close game considering
Mm-hmm.
where we are at the end of the season. Everybody's competing for playoff spots. I do feel okay saying the Rams take this win. And with the 49ers, you never know. It's at the Cardinals' place. I already said I think they'll split with them. The other thing is like, are the 49ers the 1 seed?
Are they
And
healthy?
are they healthy? Are they the 1 seed and they're benching their players? Like this is
Mm-hmm.
where we're at with
Yeah,
it.
I think that's very fair. I think that's very fair. That's all for this episode. Dean, why don't we go ahead and wrap this up?
Thank you everybody for tuning in to this video, the 20th ranked Arizona Cardinals in the 2024 preseason power rankings. If you like the video, please feel free to leave a like and subscribe to both of our channels because the evens come out on mine and the odds come out on Pat's. Thank you everybody for tuning in and watching. Hope you have a good day. Hope you have a good week. Again, the 19th ranked team will be up on Pat's channel, so keep an eye out for that. And we'll see you guys in the next one.